shalakaya chakshu unmilitam jena tasmai shri guruve namaha. Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarabhaktaya Namo Namaha. Yam Prabhajantam Anapetyam Apetya Krityam Dvaipaino Viraha Katara Ajuhava Putreti Tammayatayo Taravo Benedustam Sarvabhutam Hridimanatoshmi Bhaktya Vihina Aparada Lakshay Shibtascha Karmadi Taranga Madhye Kripa Maitvam Sharanam Prapana Brinde Namaste Charanada Vindam Vajami Radam Aravinda Netram Smarami Radam Madhurashmitasyam Vadami Radam Tarana Paradram Tato Mamanasti Katina Kapi. I first of all offer millions and millions of Dandavat pranams unto the lotus feet of my most beloved Gurudev, Nitya Leela Pravishta Om Asto Tarazara Shishimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And the same again, millions and millions of times unto the lotus feet of our most beloved Nitya Leela Pravishta Om Asto Tarazara Shishimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And all our most beloved Rupanuga Guru Varga and all the Vaishnava and Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord, my Dandavat pranams to all of you. So yesterday I made quite a significant omission. I forgot to mention the Avirbhav of our beloved Srila Bhakti Vigyan Bharati Maharaj, whose festival was celebrated yesterday. And Srila Bhakti Vigyan Bharati Maharaj has nourished our Sangha, and he used to attend my Gurudev's classes so regularly whenever he was in Vrindavan, and they were both together in Vrindavan. Srila Bhakti Vigyan Bharati Maharaj would always attend and always offered his support to my Srila Gurudev. So as a consequence, when my Gurudev left this world, he was very familiar to us, and many of the senior devotees would go for encouragement and enthusiasm. In a time of difficulty, when Gurudev first departs, then it was difficulty. So Srila Bhakti Vigyan Bharati Maharaj gave us so much of his mercy, his kripa. And we visited him many times in Faridabad, in Delhi, in Navadvip, in Puri, all different places in Vrindavan. So many times we would be blessed with his darshan, and his erudite scholarship was always very soothing on the heart. He would deliver his lectures with great erudition, exactly from the Shastra. He would just practically quote from Chaitanya Charitamrita or something like that. And then he often would not ask for questions. Sometimes questions would come, but generally he would just finish after his delivery. So I'm expressing a little bit of Pushpanjali to such a great personality. We could speak for a long time on him, but time is of the essence, and I want to study our Jaiva-Dharma. So with his mercy, today in particular, and my apologies for not mentioning it yesterday, even though I did celebrate it with some other devotees, but I didn't publicly mention anything about him. So Srila Bhakti Vigyan Bharati Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Jai. So, and of course, he was a disciple of Bhakti Dvaita Madhav Maharaj, who was a disciple of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. So he's coming in this most illustrious line. So now we're coming back to our study of Jaiva-Dharma, and I feel it's very helpful for us to hear a summary each time we begin. But we'll say the Falshruti first in honor of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's, as I said before or yesterday, Bhaktivinoda Thakur has been able to capture the whole ocean of teachings and put them into a single jar. This is how it's described. So all of these teachings are enumerated through the Falshruti in code form, more or less. We can unpack them daily, and each time it will be different. This is the nature of transcendental literature. It's never, ever static. It's always ecstatic. It's always opening more and more variegatedness into the essential truths. So we'll start today on page 829, and we'll go from verse 1. Falshruti. Okay, Bilva Mangal ji.
पृथ्वीते यथा कथा धर्म नाम चले भागवता कहे सभा परिपूर्ण चले.
As indicated in Srimad Bhagavatam 1:1-2, all the philosophies on earth that are celebrated as dharma are utterly deceptive. So I said many times, this is a very powerful statement. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is just wiping the whole material conception of dharma blank. He's saying this is nimitic dharma. This has no essential value. The only dharma is nitya dharma, Jaiva-Dharma, or Vaishnava dharma. This is a fact. And it's not up for sort of challenge. It's not if anyone wants to bring to the table, oh, what about this, we could analyze that particular philosophy or religion and its root, if it had any efficacy or truth within it, purity, it would have to be having its roots coming back to the original Veda. It would have to be. Otherwise, it's not of any value. So this 1:1-2, Dharma Projita Kaitavatra Parama Nirmatsaranam Shatam, from the second verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Right at the beginning, Vedavyas is saying this is not a cheating, not a Kaitava Dharma that is going to be presented here. This is only the pure Dharma. Pure Dharma means you can go back to its origins in antiquity. The same Lord Brahma creating the planets, etc. Lord Brahma coming from the flower, the lotus flower, from Krishna Garbhodakshay Vishnu's navel. So you can't go further back than that. Of course, you can go to Mahavishnu, you can go to Lord Narayan in Vaikunthas, you can go to Brajendranandan in Gokul, etc. But everything emanates from Goloka Vrindavan. So it's all coming from there. So this is where Vaishnava Dharma, Jaiva Dharma has its root. But all other dharmas are inadequate. They're not conclusive and they won't take it. This is so important because we get distracted by these other apparent methodologies and paths in life, especially if you haven't come in contact with this Jaiva Dharma. There'll be so many fascinating aspects that we think we can embrace and come to, and we can be illusioned to thinking, yes, if I follow this path, then I will reach that supreme limit of my capacity. But it's not true. It's actually just not true. You can perhaps go to the Brahman, but if you want to go beyond the Brahman, this means beyond Swarga also. Swarga has its ceiling in the Brahman. It's described that Brihaspati, the spiritual master of the Devas, is Brahman realized. So none of the Devas can go beyond Brihaspati's teachings or personality. They can't go further than that. So it's beyond that, beyond the Devas, etc., is the absolute reality. Okay, number 2.
Chala dharma chadikara satya dharme mati chaturvarga tyaji dhara nitya prema gati.
One should completely abandon such deceptive dharmas and absorb his mind in true dharma. Yes, why waste time? Why waste a second of our time in deceptive dharmas? In other words, one should give up the fourfold goals of material life, dharma, artha, karma, moksha, and aspire solely for the ultimate destination of nitya prem. We see that practically in India, or in the whole world, we can say for that matter, other groups and spiritual aspirants, they're going for moksha. Moksha is the carrot that everyone is suffering in these worlds, adhyatmik, adhibautik, adhidevik. We want to become liberated from our suffering. And we think that liberation from the suffering is going to give us transcendental bliss or supreme bliss. It won't. It'll simply negate the suffering. And I've said before, this example like banging your head against the wall. And then you stop and you think, well, now I'm liberated. Now you're just not suffering, but you haven't actually activated the soul. The soul's nature is activity in love towards Krishna.
This is what's going to bring this supreme Amala Prem Seva that Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks about in the last verse of this Falshruti. So without that focus, then it's only very, very limited moksha that can be attained. And unfortunately, it's what practically most people in their hearts, because everyone wants to be happy. And they think that by relieving myself of my unhappiness, I'm going to be happy. But that's not actually the whole picture. It's, yes, that's part of it. Brahma Bhuta Prasanatmana Sochati na Kanchati, becoming freed from suffering and lamentation. But then what? Then what? We'll only rejoice in relationship. Jivera Swarabhoi Krishnera Nityadas, this relationship. Okay.
आमित्वमिमां च भ्रमे निजे जड़ बुद्धि निर्विशेष ब्रह्म ज्ञाने न हे चित्त शुद्धि.
Those who are deluded identify themselves with matter. This is the delusion. I am this material body, and all the attachments and attractions that have come to accumulate in this birth, especially as we grow older, so many attachments and expectations come that we actually want to have in our lives for our various material comforts. But this is all about matter. And matter, coming from matter, you can't become transcendental through the path of matter. There has to become a spiritual element. That's why we must absolutely, without any shadow of doubt, have Guru, who is coming from a transcendental place. Only by that transcendental influence can the material soul connect with transcendence. But just by himself in a material sphere, without that torchlight of transcendence, that chakshush, that coming of potency from Guru, then there's absolutely no chance. It's like if you're stuck in a well, you can't get out without someone throwing you a rope. It's utterly impossible. And that Guru has to be alive. He has to be present. It's not that we can take shelter of someone who has already left this world, because it's described, Bhaktya Sanjataye Bhaktya. Bhakti comes from bhakti. It comes from the heart of one who has bhakti. That person has to look at you in the eye and has to actually gift you that Krishna Seva Vasana, that Bhakti Lata Bij. It has to come from a person. Otherwise, it's fictitious, it's imaginary. If we think I can take shelter of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati in Diksha, then that's just a fallacy. That's not possible. We have to, if we love Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, we'll look for his shishya, and we'll look for the shishya of his shishya, etc. Because that's the only place where we can connect. So this philosophy that has sprung up, it's an apasiddhanta, this philosophy of Ritvi. It's very convenient because you know that these past personalities are not going to fall down. So you can enter that relationship with confidence, but at the same time, it's not a confirmed relationship because they're not actually living. The person has to confirm that relationship with you personally. This is a personal philosophy, not an abstract, imaginary path at all. Okay.
Ivi chitra ratahina hale nirvisesh.
I think you've missed one. Oh, yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Ivi chitra ratahina hale nirviseshahai kala seematulya seha aprakritanai.
The Mayavad thinks Sri Krishna to be subject to the limitations of time, such as birth and death. Yes, the Mayavad is going to make his assessment of Krishna according to his own material understanding. Material understanding, not transcendental understanding. This is a Mayavad. He's trying to make Krishna come into his own conditioned control, so to speak. This is a fallacy, and considers that he is not transcendental. How can he consider Krishna transcendental when he doesn't know the meaning of transcendental? If he hasn't connected with the transcendental personality, he cannot see the transcendental form of the Lord. Thus, he rejects Bhagavan's vichitrata, astonishing characteristics, Yes, this astonishment, I've said it so many times and repeated it, because it's a very important point to appreciate and pick up this chamatkar or adbhuta, this astonishing or achintya bhav. All these mean the same thing, this astonishment. When you're astonished, it means I've never seen this before. I'm not trying to understand. I'm just, there's no other word in English. I can't think of another word. Huh?
Inconceivable.
Inconceivable, yes, inconceivable. But the emotion of astonishment. I'm astonished because it's inconceivable. And this lifts the consciousness immediately to a place where I'm not in control, so to speak, or not imagining that I'm the, because that's my material conception, to be in control. Spiritually, I'm not in control in one sense. The Lord is going to arrange everything. But when my submission is there to the Lord, and then I'm perceiving the Lord's workings and wonderment with great astonishing happiness, then this is going to, that quality of achintya bhav. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he says many times, actually, without this achintya bhav, you're not really a Vaishnava. You're basically just thinking that everything's going on under my steam. I'm the one who's assimilating Shastra. I'm the one who's working it all out. How can I be astonished by any of that? But when I hear something, appreciate something, just like when we see the form of Lord Jagannath, I think this is the best example. To see the form of Lord Jagannath. We had darshan today. It was so splendid. And as soon, personally, as my eyes set on Lord Jagannath, I immediately felt astonishing wonder. I have never really perceived this person in my life. I may have seen his form previously and been astonished previously, but just this morning, it was like the first time I'd ever seen him. And it was just so exhilarating for the heart to have that appreciation and wonderment. And then we saw Baladev, and that was totally wonderful. And then we saw Subhadra. This was also completely astonishing. And it fills the heart with rapture. It fills the heart with happiness and joy, because we're connecting directly with transcendence by having that potent darshan. That's why millions and millions and millions of people rush to see him, because they're all getting some connection with that astonishing feature of the Lord in their individual hearts and according to their individual perception. So this is very magical. It's mystical. Jagannath is full of mystical pastimes and behavior. I'm sure every person amongst those millions of people that we saw all had some type of mystical occurrence in their consciousnesses from coming in contact with the Lord of the universe, Jagannath Dev.
Yes, Maharaj, according to the Mayavadis, so the moment they see a form, so they think that form is limited by space and time.
Yes.
So then they reject it as not eternal.
Yes.
That is their.
This is exactly like the Mullah was talking in the chapter we've just done, in the 11th chapter. He's saying those exact words. He's saying, but the object, the form, is limited by time and space. Yes, time and space is a material conception. It's matter. It's just like the previous verse when we were saying that deluded identify themselves with matter. If we identify the Lord with matter, but he's not material. And we can't imagine something not material because we are material. So we have to be, our consciousness has to be transformed by something, some personality who's guru, so that my consciousness is no longer material, so that I can appreciate that which is beyond material. Understand?
Yes.
Yes, but this is a good point that you brought up, because this is how the Mayavad perceives. It's saying in this verse even, the limitations of time, such as death, but you could have said time and space. It's the same thing. Okay, we'll do the last verse on this page.
Kanda jnane heya dharma ache sunischaya prakrita haile kabu aprakrita naya.
Such base and contemptible gyan, which arises out of an attempt to dismember the divine form of Bhagavan. Yes, it's going to cut Bhagavan if you're trying to use your imagination. It's hurtful because it's not our real constitution. Our real constitution, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prem, Sadhya Kabunai, Sarvanadi Sudachita Koriya Udai. This is saying that this potential for Krishna Prem resides in the heart of the jiva, and it cannot be accessed by sadhan. Yet by the performance of sadhan, which attracts guru, then he can give his mercy to actually access this road or this path of Krishna Prem. It's so important because you have to be submissive for this. It requires the quality of humility. What is the quality of a conditioned soul? Principally is pride. Pride and envy. These two qualities are within all conditioned souls. They have pride in their various possessions, and because of that pride, they're naturally envious of people who have more than them, because always there will be someone who has more. So they want more. They want a bigger car, a bigger house, a bigger something, a bigger bank balance, on and on and on. So this envy is agitating them completely. And the antithesis of this is humility. Humility and prem, they are synonymous. Just as pride and envy are synonymous, humility and prem are synonymous. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he actually writes a very beautiful definition of humility. There are many definitions of humility, but he writes one, he says, when you have no expectations. You have no expectations of anybody. You're not expecting someone to do this or that or the other. That means you're having proper vision of empathy, of respect to every living entity for who they are, not expecting them to do this or expecting them to do that. It's very important actually on this journey to appreciate our individuality. I've said this many, many times. I don't believe in the institutional blanket consciousness that institutions must have. An institution has to be controlled, otherwise it's not an institution. And Bhakti Vinod Thakur, he says that Bhakti Devi cannot fly with its own wings in an institutional environment, because institution needs control. Otherwise, everything will go out of control. Someone has to say, do this, do this, do this, do this. And initially, this can be very, very helpful in the early days of our practice when we don't know up from down, we don't know which way to go, anything. So in those early times, they can be most helpful. But as the devotee matures, he has to spread his wings. And in an institution, they have to cut those wings because they don't fit the institutional norm. They have a standard, and that's supposed to be like this and like this and like this and like this. And if you start to move out of that standard, it's not acceptable. It doesn't work. So many of us have various qualities that don't fit into the norm. So therefore, and I've said many times the same example of the gopis, when they ran to Krishna, they all ran alone. It was the sound of that flute calling their name, and they ran responding to their name. They didn't run responding to a group call. But when they got there, they found a whole group, but they responded to their own, and they had to find the courage individually to run out into the dense darkness of night, in the middle of the night, with all the dangerous animals and creatures. Similarly, we have to extend our consciousness beyond this material body alone, with courage, because it does require courage. There's nobody with us when we step out of this body. So we have to be confident of our journey, where we're actually going. Okay, so Foul Shruti Ki Jai, Goprinandi. So now we come to chapter 12, but I want to make this summary today. And each day I would like to make this summary because I think it's very helpful to get the consistency for where we're going. So I'll just go very briefly. So the first chapter, we have Prem Das Babaji meeting Sannyasi Thakur. And when I said yesterday that my Gurudeva said that the first chapter is actually the most important, because the first chapter has Sambandha, the meeting, it has Abhideya, the process, the chanting, and it has the prayojan, when Babaji is in his meditation and he's saying silence the monkey, etc. This is all, and then the Abhideya is described in describing the, or rather the Sambandha is the three vastus, and the example of the ice block and Nishag and the swabhav of the ice. So we can remember many teachings from the first chapter. Second chapter, that very beautiful question about the infinitesimal jiva. How can his dharma, nature, be pure and eternal if he's infinitesimal? So this is unpacked through the whole of the second chapter. And then in the third chapter, Sannyasi Thakur has become Vaishnava Das Babaji. And then he starts to instruct Lahari Mahashaya. This is in the third chapter now. The fourth chapter, that discussion goes on again. And then in the fifth chapter, again, it's two personalities. In the first and second chapter, it's two personalities. In the second and third in the third and fourth chapter, it's two personalities. And in the fifth and sixth chapter, it's two personalities. So that should help us remember 2 and 2 and 2 up to chapter 6. So the 2 in chapter 5 and 6 is Lahari and his son Devidas. And then they're going to meet all with Chudamani and all the different Brahmins, Smarta Brahmins, who have come to object about Vaishnava Dharma. So then we get to chapter 7, which is a singular chapter that Bhaktivinoda Thakur has chosen just to drop in here with the conditioned soul in the form of Chandidas and Damayanti, and that beautiful transformation of his consciousness. And then after Chandidas chapter, that was chapter 7, then chapter 8 is the Kanishta, Madhyam, and Uttam Bhaktas are discussed by Nityananda Das Babaji. So that's a very, very important chapter indeed. And then chapter 9, the friend of Lahari Mahashaya has now become Advaita Das Babaji. And he's instructing or speaking or communing with Digambar. And he doesn't succeed in convincing Digambar of anything. He's a tantric smarta Brahmin, not even smarta Brahmin. He's following Kama Kand, he's following the path of material enjoyment. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is really highlighting that futility. Chapter 10 is about the authenticity of this Vaishnava Dharma. What are its origins? Where does it go back to? The Brahmins, Nayaratna, had become very disturbed. He was thinking this is just an upstart religion and it's taking away our livelihood. We have to know its authenticity. So chapter 10 is very, very powerful. Chapter 11 is the Muslims. They come and principally they're discussing this point about deity worship. Thakurji being imaginary, worshipping matter, like we just spoke about. That whole chapter. All of these chapters are so dense with explanations, principally about Sambandha. And now we've reached the 12th chapter, which is introducing us to Brajanath. But we should understand all the way through, please, where are we going in this Jaiva-Dharma? We've discussed now Sambandha Gyan. Then now next stage will be the Abhideya, which is encapsulated within the 10 ontological truths of the Dasamula. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has manifested this teaching of the Dasamula. 3 teachings about Krishna's supremacy and Rasa Tattva, but all about Krishna. 3. The first teaching is the Praman. 3 about Krishna, that makes 4. Then 3 about the Jiva, that makes 7. And then Achintya Beta Beta Tattva, that makes 8. Then Sadhan Bhakti, 9. And then Priti is 10. So those are the 10 ontological truths that Bhaktivinoda Thakur is going to gift us. And this all culminates in the 22nd chapter of Bhav Bhakti. Bhav Bhakti will be introduced to us. And this is our goal. 3 types of bhakti: Sadhan Bhakti, Bhav Bhakti, Prema Bhakti. So what's that? Kleshagni Shubhada. This is Sadhan Bhakti. Moksha Lukhata Krit Sudurlabha. This is Bhav Bhakti. And then Sandra Ananda Visheshatma, Sandrananda Visheshatma, Sri Krishna Akashani Chasa. This is Prema Bhakti. So these 3 stages of our practice, very clear. We have to do our sadhana, but it has to be focused on Bhava Bhakti. So while we're reading these first 10 chapters, first 12 chapters, we shouldn't get thinking this is the culmination of the truth. This is Vaidhi Bhakti, principally, but with the intention of coming to Bhava Bhakti. We are all practicing Vaidhi Bhakti, but with the intention of coming to Bhava Bhakti. It's described, Raghunath Das Goswami is a Prayojan Acharya, and yet he describes himself that, or Krishnadas Kaviraj describes, the lines of the regulative principles were like carved in stone within his consciousness. They would never transgress the etiquette of Vaishnavism, neither would my Gurudev. So completely following the path of Maryad, which is necessary. So we are following that path, but our consciousnesses are always focused on Bhav. So what I'm saying is not to get sort of distracted and think, yes, this chapter 5, yes, it's chapter 7, this is everything. No, it's not. It's exactly the same as the Bhagavatam. All the chapters of the Bhagavatam are phenomenal, are completely like achintya, that they're so exhilarating, but they are all leading us to the 10th canto. If our mood is not to come to the 10th canto, we haven't understood anything. If we're not understanding these first 9 cantos, I can remember with my Srila Gurudev, when I first met him, I adored the first 9 cantos, all the pastimes, the histories. And my Gurudev had to pull me out of these 9 cantos and push me into the 10th canto. I was reluctant, because I had come to be familiar with the first 9 cantos. But the 10th canto is a chintya. I don't have control there. So this is the place where we have to actually go and submit to Krishna's control, to Guru's control, to what is, first of all, Bhava Bhakti, and then Prema Bhakti. So this is where we're going. And then after the 22nd chapter here, we have 3 chapters about Nam Tattva. And that's the fuel. That is our energy to carry us into the vital next stage. When you go to the next stage, the last 14 chapters, which are very, very esoteric, this is the Rasa Tattva section. It's carrying us into the Prayojan, this Prem Prayojan. And it's very wonderful that we sadhaks have this opportunity, usually in our maturity of practice, that all of a sudden a door is opened with teachings that I've never heard before. Like Radharani is and Adyantika Adhika. She is the supreme, complete leader of all personalities. Lalita is Apekshika Adhika, and Radhika is Adyantika Adhika Madhya, and Lalita is Apekshika Madhika Adhika Pragalba. And then it goes about Samar and Lagu and all these different terminologies that up till date we've never even heard of. So the mind, again, the intelligence of the mind has to be woken up to assimilate all these new introductions of vocabulary, just for a start, and becoming familiar with this path of Rasa Tattva. So many devotees don't go beyond that. They stop there. But by the mercy of Guru, to go forward into those very difficult language chapters and trying to appreciate because what it's mapping out is the essential variegatedness of all the gopis. Some are mridvi, some are lagu. Lagu is considered like, it's not the lowest, but it's considered the least amount of bhav and prem in relationship to Radhika. And all these descriptions are all in relationship to their prem towards Radha and Krishna. And they're all so uniquely individual. So this ties in with what I was saying earlier about the institutional aspect. That doesn't really fit in with a sadhak who's trying to assimilate Rasa Tattva. So these last 14 chapters are essential to appreciate. But this is where this Jaiva-Dharma is going. It's going from Vaidhi Bhakti to Raganuga Bhakti to Prema Bhakti. This is where it's taking us to. So we should know We're in sequence, even in these early chapters. Exactly the same as the Bhagavatam. Okay, so now back to our text here. In my book, it's 263.
After a few months,
Huh?
after a few months of these activities, right at the bottom.
Okay, at the bottom of page 262. So we've discussed how Brajanath, he was the Nyaya Chudamani. He was like the crest jewel, or Nyaya Siromani, the crest jewel of all Nyaya scholars. Defeated everyone. And then we had a beautiful little interlude where one personality wanted to kill him. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur brings in the whole tantric conception, which is a reality. But then the oracle reveals that, oh, he will stop speaking on Nyaya very soon, so you don't have to be worried anymore. So then we're getting more engrossed in this personality, Brajanath, who is the perfect character. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has chosen Brajanath as the perfect, good sanskar, good sukriti. He's born in Navadvip Dham, in a Brahmin family. He has all the qualities, because later on it's described when he first takes the Harinam, that they chanted 50 rounds of Shuddhanam immediately, him and his uncle, Vijay Kumar. So this is, Bhaktivinoda Thakur has chosen this quality personality to walk us through the questions and answers he's going to get from Babaji. And we've just heard how Brajanath is questioning his grandmother. And just at that very moment, his own mother drops the shak on his plate. And then he feels the serendipity of that moment, which is almost like a miracle is happening. It's a little miracle. He puts the shak on the same time he's thinking about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this is very wonderful. So now at the bottom of page 262, after a few months of these activities of Brajanath calling out again and again for Mahaprabhu, he wants, because he's excited for his Nyaya. He's not yet excited for the precepts of Mahaprabhu because he doesn't know the precepts yet of Mahaprabhu. After a few months of these activities, Brajanath was no longer his former self. Previously, Nimai's name had pleased him only in connection with his scholarship in Nyaya. But now, Nimai pleased him in all respects. So just by chanting his name, this is the power of the name. Just like if we chant Jagannath, the power of his name is going to resonate through. Brajanath lost all interest in studying and teaching Nyaya, and no longer had any taste for dry arguments or debate. Nimai the logician no longer had any standing in the kingdom of his heart, for Nimai the devotee had usurped all authority. This is due to his good sanskar and good sukritis, that Brajanath is able to so quickly purify that misconception. Brajanath's heart would begin to dance when he heard the sound of mridanga and kartals. He would offer pranam within his mind whenever he saw pure devotees. He displayed great devotion towards Sri Navadvip. This is all due to his chanting of Nimai and his fervent heart calling, because before it was described, his heart was fully absorbed in Nyaya. And now that full absorption has been replaced with Sachinandan Gaurahari. He displayed great devotion towards Sri Navadvip, respecting it as the birthplace of Sri Gaurangadev. When rival pundits saw that Nyaya Panchanana had become soft-hearted, they were very pleased at his condition. Now they could openly step out of their houses without fear. Nyayika Pandit thought that his worshipable deity had rendered Brajanath inactive, and there was no longer any need to be afraid. One day, while Brajanath was sitting in a secluded place on the bank of the Bhagirati, he thought to himself, if such a profound scholar of the Nyaya Shastra as Nimai could renounce logic and adopt the path of bhakti, what fault would there be if I should do the same? While I was obsessed with Nyaya, I could not apply myself to the cultivation of bhakti. nor could I bear to hear the name of Nimai. In those days, I was so immersed in the Nyaya Shastra that I could not even find time to eat, drink, or sleep. Now I see things in quite the opposite way. I no longer contemplate the topics of the Nyaya Shastra. Instead, I always remember the name of Gauranga. Actually, many places in the world, they propagate this name of Gauranga, Gauranga, Gauranga. If you go to many places in England, for example, on the freeways, on the highway, they have bridges, and people have come there with aerosol and they've written Gauranga. And as many people drive through, they shout out the name Gauranga because it has direct effect on the consciousness, just like Jagannath has direct effect on the consciousness. So this is what's happened to Brajana. Still, even though the ecstatic devotional dancing of the Vaishnavas captivates my mind, I am the son of a Vedic Brahmana. So again, this is his abhiman. Just like just Sannyasi Thakur. He couldn't approach that Vaishnava because he had the abhiman of his important position in comparison to this. So he has his Brahman barrier that's holding him back. I was born in a prestigious family, and I am highly respected in society. Although I truly believe that the behavior and conduct of the Vaishnavas is excellent, it is inappropriate for me to adopt their ways outwardly. Very interesting couple of sentences, because this is the case with many Brahmanas. We have even Srila Bhakti-Vigyan Bharati Maharaj. He spoke of his own hesitation when he came to the Vaishnavas. He understood, yes, this philosophy and these personalities are completely 100% on the pure path, but still he couldn't fully come and sit with them and be served his prasadam by a Sudra or having a Sudra cook. This was like never in his life had he taken anything that hadn't been served to him by a Brahmana. So he had to go through a whole incredible transformation that he shares with us often. But this is the brick wall of someone whose respect for themselves by their caste, etc., has inhibited their coming to Vaishnavism. This was also described in the 6th chapter with Chudamani and those other smarter Brahmins. When they came to challenge the Vaishnavas, they were all restricted by their caste distinction. How great were they as Brahmanas? They couldn't climb over that and give it away. This is how deep it goes. In the West, because we don't have any of that, we're actually Antyaja. So all of the Western people, we're not even born in the Varnashram system, so we have nothing to give up. But we take it very lightly. But I'm sure a caste Brahmana, you will understand. It's a very, very deep, deep, deep thing. You understand this more than me. You know, how deep is our caste and our connection there. There are many Vaishnavas in Sri Mayapur at Kola Mangadanga, where Chankazi broke the Mridanga to stop the Sankirtan, and at Bairagi Danga, the place of Vaishnava asceticism. I feel happy and purified at heart when I see the radiance of their faces. But amongst all those devotees, it is Sri Raghunath Das Babaji Mahashai who completely captivates my mind. When I see him, my heart fills with Shraddha. I would like to be by his side continuously and learn the Bhakti Shastras from him. It is said in the Vedas.
Yes. Atmava are drashtavya shrotavyo mantavyo nididhyastasya brihad aranyaka Upanishad 456.
Thank you. One should see, hear about, think of, and meditate on the supreme absolute truth. In this mantra, the word mantavya means to be thought of, to be considered or examined, to be admitted or assumed, to be approved or sanctioned, or to be called into question. Although the word suggests that one should acquire Brahmagyan by studying the Nyaya Shastra, the word shrotavya, to be heard or learned from a teacher, implies the necessity of something greater. Again, this is a sort of direct defeat of the Ritvik philosophy. You have to hear from a teacher, from a living teacher, not from a teacher. And then they also say, but like Bhaktivinoda Thakur has quoted, he reasons ill who tells that Vaishnavas die. The Vaishnavas never die. They're always eternal, but they're eternal in their spiritual forms. They're not eternal in their material forms. And we are in material forms. So we have to connect with someone who is also in his material form. So far, I have spent much of my life in useless arguments and debate. Now, without wasting any more time, I long to dedicate myself to the feet of Sri Gaura Hari. It will therefore be most beneficial for me to go after sunset and take darshan of Sri Raghunath Das Babaji Mahashai. So this is a momentous time. This is a momentous occasion. He's taking his first direct, active step towards his connection with the Vaishnavas. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur has mapped this out beautifully. It's come from a desire to, first of all, strengthen his material desire to increase his erudition in Nyaya. That was where it began. He wants to do better and defeat other people. And then from there, the name of Nimai Pandit came into his consciousness. Then the name of Gaura Hari came into his consciousness. Then the name of Gauranga came into his consciousness. Then Gauranga flooded his whole heart. And then the Vaishnavas started to look attractive to him. Their radiance and the sound of the mridangas and the card. So it's a gradual coming. It's not just a sudden thing. So it's a holistic process that Bhaktivinoda Thakur is clearly describing. Rajanath set out for Sri Mayapur at the close of day. The sun was rapidly vanishing below the western horizon, but its crimson rays were still dancing amidst the treetops. A gentle breeze blew from the south, and birds flew in various directions, returning to their nests. This is beautiful. We can just put ourselves there. This is sunset. At sunset, the birds, they return to their nests. The sky takes on a different color. Time. He's bringing time into the consideration, to take a pause, a breath. Yes, where are we going now? The first few stars were gradually appearing in the sky. As Vrajanath arrived at Srivasangam, the courtyard of Srivas Thakur's house, the Vaishnavas began Sandhya Arti in worship of Bhagavan, chanting and singing with sweet voices. Vrajanath took his seat on a platform beneath a bakula tree. His heart melted as he heard the Arti Kirtan of Gaura Hari. And when it ended, the Vaishnavas joined him on the platform. At that time, the elderly Raghunath Das Babaji Mahashai came and took a seat on the platform, chanting Jai Sachinandan, Jai Nityananda, Jai Rup Sanatan, Jai Das Goswami. As he did so, everyone rose and offered him Dandavat pranams, and Brajanath also felt compelled to do the same. So that's very significant, that Brajanath's pride wasn't too great to offer Dandavat pranams. This was also very significant. When the aged Babaji Mahashai saw the extraordinary beauty on Brajanath's face, he embraced him and requested him to sit by his side. "Who are you, my son?" asked Babaji. So this is very wonderful, that Babaji was attracted to him also. His beauty, obviously, because he comes from such a pure family, from such a pure lineage, and his erudition in Shastra, his scholarship, would have created such a radiance on the face of Brajanath that even attracted Raghunath Das Babaji. So this is very significant also. Brajanath replied, "I am one who is thirsting for the truth, and I long to receive some instructions from you." A Vaishnava seated nearby recognized Brajanath and said, "His name is Brajanath Nyaya Panchanana. There is no scholar of Nyaya equal to him in all of Navadvip, but now he has developed some faith in Sachinandan." Hearing of Brajanath's vast erudition, the elderly Babaji said courteously, "My dear son, you are a great scholar, and I am a foolish, wretched soul. You are a resident of the holy Dham of our Sachinandan, and we are therefore objects of your mercy. How can we instruct you? Kindly share with us some of the purifying narrations of Yogaranga and pacify our burning hearts. So again, this is just like Prem Das Babaji was reciting to Sannyasi Thakur in the first chapter, saying the same type of mood. And Nityananda Prabhu also said this, Nityananda Das Babaji said the same type of mood to the Vaishnava. And Vaishnava Das Babaji said the same type of mood to all these smarta Brahmins who came to challenge. Even they said the same type of thing to the mullah. This mood of dinhin, this mood of complete submissiveness. They're not about to debate or anything of that nature. Just let's reach the highest stage of consciousness and share that. Tell us about Gauranga Dev. This is what he's asking. Share with us some of the purifying narrations of your Gauranga and purify our burning hearts. As Babaji Maharaj and Brajanath conversed in this way, the other Vaishnavas gradually arose and dispersed to resume their respective services. Brajanath said, Babaji Mahashai, I was born in a Brahmin family, and as a result, I am very proud of my learning. So this is amazing that he's able to say that. This is not an ordinary person. It's amazing that he's able to say he was proud. As soon as you say you're proud, you're not so proud. As soon as you make that admission, when you read Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Gita Mala or Gita Vali, these beautiful songs and poetry of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he's confessing his heart to Gopinath. I am so fallen, I am so wretched, I have nothing. He's lamenting like this. When you open up like that, your vulnerability, then the channel becomes cleaned where you can actually connect with that supreme mercy coming through. Because of my egoism of high birth and knowledge, I think this earth is within the grip of my hand. I have no idea how to honor sadhus and great persons. I cannot say by what good fortune I have awakened faith in your character and behavior. I wish to ask you a few questions. Please answer them, understanding that I have not come to you with any ulterior motive. So that's very important. He's not challenging. He's coming from the heart. There's a distinction. When you come from the mind, you want something, but when you come from the heart, you want nourishing in a much more significant way. So he's making it very clear he has no ulterior motive. Tadvini pranipashena sevaya. This verse is saying exactly the same thing in Bhagavad Gita. Brajanath then asked Babaji Mahashai fervently, kindly instruct me. What is the jiva's ultimate goal of life, sadhya? And what is the means, sadhan, to attain that goal? What a beautiful question. This is the same question, more or less, that Sanatana Goswami asked Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the 20th chapter of the Madhya Lila, Chaitanya Charitamrita. He comes with the beginning of Sanatana Shiksha. Sanatana Shiksha goes for 5 chapters. The chapter just before these 5 is Rupa Shiksha, the instructions to Rupa Goswami in the 19th chapter. But this same question was posed by Sanatana Goswami. While I was studying the Nyaya Shastra, I concluded that the jiva is eternally separate from Ishvara, and that the mercy of Ishvara is the only cause of the jiva's obtaining mukti. So everything is right except mukti. I have understood that the particular mood by which the mercy of Ishvara may be obtained is called sadhan. The result that is achieved through sadhan is known as sadhya. So we have sadhan, then we have, first of all, we have the sadhak, and then we have sadhan, then we have sadhya, and we have sadguru. Sad means perfect. So in all these stages, it's perfection all the way through. The sadhak, the sadhya, the sadhyam, and the sadguru, all perfect. I have understood the particular method by which the mercy of Ishvara may be obtained is called sadhan. The result that is achieved through sadhan is known as sadhya. I have probed the Nyaya Shastra many times with the inquiry as to what are sadhya and sadhan. However, the Nyaya Shastra remains completely silent on this point. It has not supplied me with the answer. Please tell me your conclusions regarding Sadhya and Sadhan. So it's interesting that Nyaya Shastra doesn't answer these questions. However, you go into the Shastra, into the smarta aspect, this Nyaya, you won't find, because there's no if there's no goal, if there's no glorification of Krishna, then how can there be a goal? It's just like he described tonight in this summary. Unless we're focusing on the prayojan at the end, or bhav bhakti at least, then our whole sadhan bhakti is like zero. If we're not focusing on bhav bhakti, our sadhan bhakti, then what else are you focusing on? What else are we focusing on if we're not focusing on bhav bhakti? It means I'm focusing some material shakti or some material potency here. But bhav bhakti is that wonderment, that achintya place of wonderment. Shri Raghunath Das Babaji was a disciple of Raghunath Das Goswami. This is important to remember. Raghunath Das Babaji is a disciple of Raghunath Das Babaji. So we're getting some time frame here. When was this book, when is it written? It's just 100 or so years after Mahaprabhu, basically. It's that type of era, that type of time. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is writing this because he knows there's a gap here. We had the 6 Goswamis, Krishnadas Kaviraj, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Baladev Vidibhushan. But then there was a gap of 100 years, in fact, where it seemed like the Vaishnava Dharma went down because it wasn't being propagated by any great acharya. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is stepping into that void and connecting what was previously there through this Jaiva-Dharma. This Jaiva-Dharma is like a connecting link to our historical teachings of the Goswamis. It's bringing everything up to speed. Disciple of Sri Raghunath Das Goswami. He was not only an erudite scholar, but also a self-realized saint. He had lived for a long time at Radhakund under the shelter of Sri Das Goswami's lotus feet, and every afternoon he had heard from him the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Dev. Wow, that is incredible that he's hearing that. He's hearing these pastimes of Mahaprabhu directly from Raghunath Das Goswami. So we can just imagine what level he's up to. Raghunath Das Babaji would regularly discuss philosophical truths with Krishnadas Kaviraj Mahashai. And whenever some doubt arose, they resolved it by inquiring from Sri Das Goswami. After both Raghunath Das Goswami and Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami left this world, Sri Raghunath Das Babaji came to Sri Mayapur and became the principal Pandit Babaji in the Gauda Mandal. So previously it was Jagannath Das Babaji in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's times, but this is before then. So now this is Raghunath Das Babaji is the Mahant. He and Premdas Paramahamsa Babaji Mahashai of Sri Godrum often discuss topics of Sri Hari absorbed in Prem. So we know Sri Premdas. We met him in the first 2 chapters. He was there. So he's also connected to us. Just like Vidura and Maitreya and all these personalities from the Bhagavatam. They're our family now. They're part of our family. And we relate to them. We hear topics about them with great happiness. And we support them and so on. So we actually got just a minute to go. So I don't really want to discuss this. This is a big topic now that Babaji is going to begin. I think we should keep this for tomorrow. But do you have any point of discussion or question or anything that we've mentioned that we could just fill in a couple of minutes?
So what was interesting for me was Sri Bhaktivinoda Thakur is mentioning about this Gaura Arati time. He's mentioning it often. Even in the first chapter, we saw how that, what is his name, Mahashay, Sannyasi, he's also gets a vision of this
Yes.
And then he gets blessed, and he says, I get a glimpse
Yes.
of this due to my guru's association.
And
Mercy.
are you thinking that Gora Arti must have been the one written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur? I thought you were going to ask something like, I mean, what Gora Arti did they sing? I think that Gora Arti that Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote, Kipa Jayo Jaya Gora, I think that Arti is almost like eternal Arti. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that even in those times, I don't know this. I'm just speculating there, but
So
we don't know today any other Gora Arti except the one by Bhaktivinoda Thakur.
He's talking about the time so beautifully.
Yes.
He's telling the sun is setting and the sound of
yes, and this is the time, because
birds are flying home.
because we understand from Bhagavatam, if you remember, in the 3rd canto, I think it's the 12th chapter, 12th or 20th, when it's described how the demons, they run to Lord Brahma for sex life. And Lord Brahma is instructed by Krishna, give up that body, drop that conception of your body. And those demons, they take that body, but that body turns into a beautiful damsel. And that damsel is ravaged by the demons, etc. But that damsel is described as the heralding of the sunset. At the sunset time, all the materialists want to enjoy. Their passion is increased at sunset because it's such a beautiful time. They want to exploit that beauty. So this is a most dangerous time. Unless we sing that Sandhya Arti, unless we sing that Gora Arti at that time, all the rising negative demonic influences could override our consciousnesses. So therefore, we always sing. It's a most inauspicious time if you're not chanting, if you're not singing. We should never, for example, take rest between 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock in the evening, because that's when all the hobgoblins and ghosts are running around, because they know that this darkness, because darkness is the time when all the thieves and murderers can come out. Yes, they can flourish because they can hide in the darkness. The demons can come. So this is heralding their period. So unless we offset it with this strong Sandhya Vandana, this Gora Arti, then we can be overwhelmed by that. So Srimad Bhagavatam elucidates on everything. So Jaiva-Dharma Chapter. Tomorrow we'll hear the incredible answer, the beginning of this answer by Raghunath Das Babaji. And this goes on for a little while, but up until the chapter 13. So this is a very, very beautiful part of this Jaiva-Dharma, where we're just being elevated into a very extraordinary consciousness, because we tune into Brajanath all the way through now and see his growth, his spiritual progress, the questions that he asks, especially about Krishna Tattva, Jiva Tattva, Maya Tattva, Shakti Tattva. These are all the questions he's going to ask. So that is why it's like the whole ocean in a jar, because all of the Siddhantas are going to be here. So Jaiva-Dharma ki jai, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bo, Vanchakalpatarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhuvevacha, Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnave Namo Namaha, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bo. Okay, you got it a little bit early. I've become